Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. What would be a live streaming YouTube without technical difficulties?
Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever
For
you
instance, this.
What would be
Cool.
live streaming YouTube?
Please let
without
us know
technical
if you can
difficulties?
hear me, if you have been able to hear the music, and if everything is working as intended.
Please let us
Because
know
I
if you
seriously
can
doubt it.
hear me, if you have been able to hear the
How's
music,
everybody? I can see
and
some
if
people
everything
coming
is
our
working
way,
as
and I can see
intended.
people with already with
Seriously
questions.
doubt
That
it.
is amazingly lovely. That's
How's
really, really
everybody? I
nice.
can see
We'll
some
address
people
them all in
coming
a
our
minute
way, and
once
I can
we've
see
done
people
with
with
the
already with
pleasantries.
questions. That is amazingly lovely.
Yeah,
Really, really
that's
nice.
one I'm
We'll
gonna answer
address
in a
them
minute.
all in a minute once we've
Well,
done with the pleasantries.
sorry for the short notice. This show, I've been
Yeah,
really
that's
busy. I
one
got
I'm
a
gonna
couple
answer
of
in a
gigs
minute.
coming my way, and I'm not
Well,
totally prepared. So
sorry for the
sadly,
short
that
notice.
had to
This
take
show, I've been really busy. I got a couple of
priority
gigs coming my
in
way,
my
and I'm
to-do
not
list.
totally prepared.
Same
So
as having
sadly, that had
to
to take
enjoy a wonderful weekend. The past weekend,
priority
not this one coming, the
in
past
my
weekend,
to-do list.
29th and
Same
30th of
as having
June
to
in
enjoy a
Cambridge
wonderful
in
weekend.
the
The past weekend, not this one coming, the past
Museum
weekend,
of
28th,
Computer History
29th and
in
30th of
Cambridge.
June in
Wait,
Cambridge
museum?
in the
I think I always get that muddled up.
Museum of
It's
Computer
something
History
similar to
in
museum.
Cambridge.
I'm crossing thoughts right
Wait,
now.
museum?
So we
I
went
think
down
I always
there
get
a
that
couple
muddled up.
of hours in the
It's
community, in
something
the synth
similar to museum.
community. That was
I'm crossing
Mr.
thoughts right now.
Rob Pulicelli,
So,
which you've been watching in
we
his
went down
wonderful
there
show,
a
Process
couple of
Network, a couple of
hours in the
hours
community, in the
ago,
synth community. That was
and
Mr. Rob
with
Pulicelli,
one of
which
his
you've been
friends who
watching
helped
in
him to
his
bring
wonderful show, Process
every
Network, a couple of hours
emulator ever
ago.
produced and showcase and celebrate. I think it's the
With one of
40th
his friends who
anniversary
helped him to
of the
bring
product, or at least
every
of the launch
emulator ever
of
produced
one of them. I can't remember
and
which one.
showcase
Shame on
and
me.
celebrate. I think it's the 40th anniversary
Uh,
of the
and
product,
me
or at least of
myself
the launch
and a bunch of
one
other
of them. I can't
synth
remember which one. Shame on me.
enthusiasts. Try to say that three times in a row.
And me myself
And all
and a
collectors
bunch of
like me
other
to
synth
showcase what's up,
enthusiasts.
what was in the
Like to say that
history of
three times in a row.
synthesizers,
And
and
all
what was the
collectors like me
relationship,
to
on a celebration
showcase
of the relationship between
what's up,
synthesizers
what was
and computer
in
music,
the history of
which
synthesizers,
not so much
and
on
what
the
was the
emulator
relationship
side, but at
on a
least on
celebration of the relationship
what I
between
showcase
synthesizers and computer
in
music,
that event,
which
which was my
not so
JV
much
Roland
on the
JV
emulator
collection.
side, but at least on
Uh,
what I
Although
showcase in
it tried to
that
sell
event,
to both
which
ends of the
was my
spectrum, he
JV
tried to
Roland
sell to the
JV collection,
professionals, but all at the
uh,
same time tried to sell to the
although it tried
semi-professionals, to the working
sell
class
to both ends
musicians,
of the
try to make a
spectrum, he
living out
tried to
of
sell to the professionals,
synthesizers,
but all at the same
sequencers,
time
and
tried to sell to the
MIDI files,
semi-professionals,
but also
to
to
the working
the
class musicians,
home,
try to make a
uh,
living out of
what we call nowadays bedroom
synthesizers,
producers,
sequencers,
those
and MIDI
original
files,
pioneers with
but
those,
also to the
I don't know,
home,
Amiga computers and the like,
what
Pentium
we call
ones,
nowadays bedroom
running
producers,
copies
those
of the
original
early
pioneers with those
uh, DAWs, like for instance, well, not really a DAW per se, but that mighty sequence Cubase for Atari 500, which we made a demonstrations in the weekend connected to the JBs to showcase what back in the day you could program and how would it sound with a proper sound and interface. Although that was brought to the event by Mr. Tony Jewell, the organizer, the person in charge of the synthesized side of the center. Sorry, Center for Computer History in Cambridge. That's the name. It came back to me. It's not museum, although it's an awesome museum to see the whole evolution of personal computing mostly, but also a big chunk of the evolution of professional and corporate computing as well. So he brought his whole Roland, I would say, digital performing system mounted on his Atari, but I got surprised myself that it was a system. I don't like the word old, but so vintage that each module, the mixer, the key input device, the arranger, and the pitch to MIDI device were all talking to each other through MIDI. All Roland devices and probably pre-configured to talk scissors in between them. But it wasn't a shock, but it was surprising to see that how much power you could harness just through our all beloved 5-pin DIN connected to several devices doing specific functions to talk back to a computer who would be the brain, putting all together and talking also as well to the MIDI sound sources, because obviously we're talking about a point in music computer history where the computer was not powerful enough to handle the sequencing and the sound generating at the same time. Although we're talking about Cubase, we're talking about the version of Cubase that was before VSTs. So really impressive system, working flawlessly, not a hitch, not a glitch, nothing, and doing, although cheesy and already dated, very, very nice music. They're in the Center for Computer Music in Cambridge. Let me first, following with the pleasantries and the introductions, let me just address a couple of questions people are very gladly already throwing our way. So, first of all, welcome you all, since you're not hundreds and hundreds. So, Keith in Watford, James, as you had. Welcome to you all. Although I'm not familiar with James. The other two persons I know they're here where I am in UK. So it would be nice if Mr. James, it's also Neil Wharton. Hello. Would be nice for him to be in the American side with our friends. And talking about American friends, I cannot find a better segue to introduce to you the person you really are coming here to watch, which is my co-host, Mr. Synth-Arrists. How's it going, mate? Are you doing
we have
fine?
Pleasantries? Since when do we have pleasantries?
Since I can't find another synonym for let's do this shit, shall we?
Just kidding. Yeah. So that wasn't
good.
doing that in our pre-show. Does that? Did you know what's causing the loopback?
It's gonna be me. What do you
It's
mean?
your potato thing, right?
It's my potato thing. Okay, let me see. Your potato should not be sending to you. What do you
It's
mean?
your potato, because for a while it's just me. Now it's both of us are going through there.
What about now?
Better, yeah. That's gone. So memorize that setting, whatever that is.
Yeah, the problem is computers. I hate computers.
Take a screenshot.
So, let's do this. Please let us know if you all can hear Synth-arrists as well, because I think I'm handling the audio and I'm doing a very, very bad job tonight. Oh, by the way, come for the information and stay for the train wreck. Tonight's show is gonna be... It's gonna be a miracle if we finish it, because too many things have not been done homework
all last minute,
so
but we'll get it going.
We're just gonna wing it on the best 6 oscillator style, but I think it's gonna be interesting anyhow. Going back to the guest, going back to the people in the chat, and trying to address a couple of questions already thrown to me. Let's see, for instance, I hope if anybody of you has any issue with me sharing your comments, please let me know and I'll stop. But I think this one is worth showing. I don't think I need to read. And you're very welcome. That's one of the families and people. They are more than welcome in the 6 oscillators with a totally inclusive show. Nobody that can put synthesizer and guitar in the same sentence is ever going to be rejected here. You're among friends, you're within family, you're one of us. One of us.
This is all the misfits here. So.
Not like these other pages and forums and other places that, we're a guitar forum, synthesizers, voodoo. Or,
this is like the Rudolph Island of Misfit voodoo. Toys from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
We're just in the middle. Just on that nobody's land, that silly... apparently it's being created by I don't understand who.
Gatekeepers.
You possibly not tonight. We're not gonna see that subject tonight. But if you have a specific question, I will be about guitars and how to try to translate it to synthesizers, and I know the answer. I'm more than happy to answer for you. So if you have any more questions, please keep sending it our way. Also, yeah, Mr. James again. Sorry, nothing personal. So let me just say that I wouldn't know what to do without Mr. Synth-arrists. He is the 75% of the show that actually works, and the ones that all the heavy lifting. I just look pretty on camera sometimes.
I misfire plenty. Don't worry about it.
So thank you very much, and thank you, Synth-arrists, for your wonderful job trying to spread the word. Yeah, what else do we have here? Oh, yeah, this one is answering. Have I recovered? Nope. He was really taxing on me. Not only the setup and tear down, plus the 2 non-stop days, the talking, which I love. Everybody who knows me knows that I love the sound of my own voice. And trying to spread my little knowledge about these. It's my understanding that the JV family, it's a great unknown, because everybody thinks he knows about them, but I'm discovering that there are tons of misconceptions, that there are tons of I've heard that, but I don't really know because I never had that particular item, and tons of, somebody told me that somebody thought that somebody had said. It's amazing the amount of that I'm finding online. Not so much in person with the people involved, but online.
That's most of online in general.
The knowledge is starting to get a little blurred. So I might have to take the cause, the crusade on my own and do something about it on the near future. So keep your eyes peeled. I will inform every one of you if you're interested. Okay, we got a little audio. I hope the audio is being fixed. There's a delay on the audio.
You still hear me okay, right?
Yep, hanging around. Come on, hang around. That's what we do. Hi, everybody.
Is my audio still good?
Okay, we solved the... Hey, Ace of Stripe. Hey to you too, and congratulations for your new releases in Bandcamp. Please, everybody, check Ace of Stripe in Bandcamp. He's releasing a wonderful, wonderful synthesizer-based music. And... Oh, Neil Wharton. Okay. Did you came to synthesize? Okay. Yeah, no problem. I mean, it is what it is. You have the time you have it. There's nothing to hold you accountable for. Thank you for coming. And if I'm next, you'll be... sorry, let me rephrase that. You'll be totally welcome to go back next year. Either I'm there or not. The event is still gonna be awesome. Probably more awesome if I'm not there. Because let's face it, nobody wants a guitar player in a synth convention. But having said so, shall we get into the subject that we're gonna try to deal tonight? Shall we?
Can you hear me okay?
Okay. And you see, that's gonna be the problem with this. Try again.
Yeah, is that better? Yeah, so I've been talking for a while. You killed my mic.
And you see, that's gonna be the problem with this. Try again.
Yeah, is that better?
No, that's the echo, so I don't want that.
Yeah, so I've been talking for a while. You killed
Let's
my mic.
try this. Give me a second. I know what's my mistake. The one I make every single week, every single month. There it is. So now, if I do this, we should be all good. What about that?
How about testing, 1, 2.
I can hear you. Can everybody hears everybody?
I'm repeating though.
Are you repeating? All right. Oh God, computers, brain fried.
Yeah.
So the problem is if I do this. Okay, guys, please let me know if you can still hear synthetic. Say something, please.
Testing, 1, 2, testing. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think I can hear you. Okay. Let's see if the people can hear you as well. They should.
Test. I think
waiting for the delay.
Yeah,
cool.
You fixed it.
No repeats. Yeah, I fixed it kind of. You know what is the rookie mistake I make every week? I forgot to shut up YouTube.
Oh.
That's why I'm having both things coming in.
That's why. Okay.
That's why. Kids, don't do this at home. It's just
had about that same time delay. There's usually, a 5-second delay or something like that. So.
Because I was feeding so basically I was watching YouTube on the same mixer that is going to YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's getting both and sending it back and making a loop.
No.
No. Stupid.
Yeah.
Good. So, why are we here tonight? Because we have nothing else to do. We're so pitiful. Now, tonight, I thought in the timeline I'm trying to draw in this broadcast, in this hang with friends about guitars and synths. One of the targets or agendas I have is to give back to the guitar community the information I would have appreciated to have when I started it, which is I knew nothing about synthesizers of any kind. All right. All I knew about synthesizers is that they were very expensive. Apart from that, yeah, the typical concept, you have the keyboard concept, that's a synthesizer. But when I first started thinking, oh, I want to buy one, I didn't even know about the genealogy. Where did it come from? What was the origin? What is the whys and whats of everything? And also, I didn't even know about that. All started with analog in the first place, but modular synthesizers in the second place. Hence that tonight I came with this baby. No, it's not modular. That's not a modular synthesizer, but it's the next best thing that I can afford. For the few of you, in fact, can any of you give me a thumbs up or similar if you're coming from the guitar world? Because for what I can see, you all come from the synth world. So tonight's show is going to be a little boring. Because
I'll try and make it interesting. It won't quite be a romper room, but you know.
No, it's not boring as it's no, it's not that boring. It's boring because we're just gonna go through things you already know, okay? But also I'm wanting to spread this, and if you know any guitar player who's interested in synthesizers or guitar synthesizers or anything, please share the show. Tell him that we have some of the answers that he's looking for, and ask him to watch or even join us on the next show. So tonight's show is gonna be more addressing the guitar player. When I say guitar, I always mean guitar/bass, that wants to try the world of synthesizer, but has never ever dipped any of his fingers into anything with a CV option, or even know what the heck I'm talking about right now. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through the basics, the blocks that create a synthetic or synthesized sound. Why is it important? What is the meaning of it? Why could you translate it to guitar lingo? A lot of lingo we're gonna go through that anybody that is already in the synthesizer side of things is basically gonna I know. But please bear in mind that the other half of this community I want to start don't know, have no idea, and if they know the word, they're not really sure what it means, right? Or how to play with it. Cool. So, first disclosure for tonight. As before, anything you're gonna see on screen tonight, any piece of gear, any piece of tech, anything that is gonna be involved on the explanations and the dissertation and the rumbling of myself and Synth-Arrists, no manufacturer has given us any beep, not a penny, not even a miserable patch cable. Everything you see on screen is coming from our own pockets, out of our very very big effort and hard-earned money. And no, they're not sponsoring or funding or sending any income to us for showing their products. Okay? So, are we ready?
Sure.
Let's do this. So, let's start synthesizers for guitar players. First of all, as we already touched in one of the previous shows, what a synthesizer is an electronic device that manages to create out of sheer power, as in electric power, sounds that could be used or utilized on a musical manner. That's on very broad strokes what a synthesizer is. But under that definition, an electric guitar also can be defined as an electronic, although mechanical, physical mechanical, interacting with electronics, way to generate through a speaker, coming out of a speaker, a piece of sound that sounds musical and pleasant. The origins of both technologies, they all come roughly from the 20s and 30s, very close together with the radio evolution in mostly America and UK, but thanks to the transmitter, thanks to the amplifiers, thanks
Don't
to
forget
the radio.
Russia, you got the theremin, so.
Russia, and assume Russia would have had also their radio network broadcast, wouldn't they?
Sure.
Because most of that technology is coming from the trying to make speech sound in the first place, travel through very long distances. That was one of the reasons to make physics, as in air vibration that we produce with our, for instance, vocal cords. We vibrate air that creates a shock wave on the air that transmits through a very short distance. But to make that message travel a longer distance, we needed literally more power. Electrical
it's not that
power.
efficient. The rarefaction of air, sound travel going through air, is very inefficient. So
exactly,
it depends on the humidity, the altitude, a bunch of other features that affect the sound. And just giving it more volume isn't necessarily going to make it any better. So
yeah,
it's very complicated.
You need to change it into a media that can travel longer and hopefully faster.
Like sound travels much faster underwater. The density makes it travel a hell of a lot faster than it does in air. So,
as many other things we will see in acoustics and sound is also frequency dependent, because low frequencies travel they don't travel very long on liquid or gas media, but they travel quite farther through solid media, as in rock or walls.
Like a lion's low frequency roar, you can hear like over a mile away easily. So,
or the elephants have been told that it's like
infrasound. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Even using infrasound that we can even hear is below the range that we can hear.
It's like 10 to 15 hertz or something like that. Yeah,
it's below the theoretically 20 hertz capacity of a common human. All right, there's always people that go slightly off the edges, but the mass of us is 20 to 22,000 hertz that we can hear and process. Good, but once again, through physical media, we're talking hundreds of meters, several kilometers, if lucky, dependent media and dependent frequency, and the message gets the other end totally distorted. So the first race through technology was to try to send messages that will travel, for instance, through a wire. For instance, the telegraph. Just a beep, 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 a code of beep, long beeps, short beeps, that would create a voltage transcription at the other end of the wire. And the wire would be as long as physics and cable resistance would allow.
I think the record's still the transatlantic cable. It's still there. So
and working.
Very long cable, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Although for the transatlantics, they use amplifiers in the line. because resistance of cable, physics, electronics.
Just like the radio, you need repeaters of some kind to, yeah.
And that was the next revolutions. Once they managed to send messages through a wire, they tried to remove the wire and get the same message through. When they managed that, as in getting the beep, 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 beeps to the other end with no wires, I said, hey, how more complex, with more power, we might be able to get a more complex message. So they started trying to transfer voice, as in speech. Very, very, very simplified, as in not with a full frequency, not with the full range of frequencies that a voice
do it
would
in
have.
bands, yeah, certain bands.
Mm-hmm. You can do the mid range, a big chunk of the mid range, the lower, the higher, whatever. They tried everything just to transfer the speech through a very long distance, and with more powerful, higher, more accurate machines, more accurate systems of amplification, codification, decoding, they managed at the end to transfer what you would consider, or at least what it was considered at the time, a fuller, not full, but fuller range of audio through the waves, hence the commercial radio. We finally managed to hear a conference from somebody from another continent, or even music from another continent, just through the waves. Why is all this relevant, and why in a synthesizer show are we talking about this? Because all those electronics, all those advancements, vacuum tubes, amplifiers, resistors, capacitors, and the most important of them all for what we are dealing here tonight, the transistor, which is a solid state vacuum tube or valve. God, now I don't remember. How is it called? Is it?
We call transistors in the U.S. Yeah, but you guys call it valves. Yeah.
So UK call valve what Americans call tubes, right?
Yeah.
Good. So
Sorry, I had that messed up. Yeah, it's
no,
vacuum tube
too.
is what we call vacuum
because
tube.
I use both.
You guys call it valves. I think the U.S. is the only country that causes it vacuum tube. I think because of the British influence, most of the world says valves. I mean, it's changing, but for a long time, I would talk to somebody in another country that's not the UK, and they would call it a valve.
Depends on the environment you're frequenting, because I think I started hearing tubes, as in the American term, because in Spanish we use the translation of valve.
Yeah.
Why the difference in the name is because tubes, it's referencing the industrial manufacturing of the device.
Yeah,
when
it's
valve,
in a vacuum, which makes sense. So it's a vacuum inside.
It's like a
light bulb.
Like the old type light bulbs. Okay, comes in a vacuum, but valve is referring of the function, the electronic function that the mechanism, physical mechanism inside is doing, is making the job of a tap, like a valve, is opening or closing the flow of electricity to take a very small signal and feed it with extra power to make that signal bigger.
But unlike
hence
the digital,
amplified.
it has a ramp instead of an instant. So,
sorry, come again?
You have a ramp instead of the digital equivalent. The transistor is like a gate, so bam, bam, bam.
Yeah,
whereas
it's faster.
The vacuum tube is more a ramp.
Yeah, it's softer.
So.
We're talking nanoseconds difference, but a tube is more of a ramp. It's I'm getting there. Yeah. And a transistor is more like, hey, I'm there. But once again, we're talking nanoseconds. It's like nothing really perceptible until you put it through his spaces. So that type of technology, the transistor, allowed for very, very beefy and voluminous circuits to get downsized to portable options. For instance, wasn't the There was a keyboard I think in the 40s that was almost a synthesizer made out of tubes.
Oh, Hammond Novacord.
Hammond Novacord.
It's 30. I think it's 37 or 38. It's very old. Yeah.
300 something tubes inside.
It was polyphonic, so it had to have all that circuitry per key.
Yeah. Exactly.
Crazy. I mean, it was divide down technology, but it also had to have that the ability to play multiple notes.
Just be aware that, and this is just for proportion. This is not the real size. If this is the size of a tube, right? That does 2 jobs if lucky. Sorry, it does 2 jobs if lucky. This is the size of a transistor. Proportionally, okay? It's not the real size. So think about how much jobs you can do with the same space of these little babies.
And the heat generated by them is a problem, all that stuff. Just like they had with old computers like the Mark I and the ENIAC and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got tons of advantages, as in reliability, frequency, not being so frequency dependent, not being blocked by
fragile, very fragile.
Not fragile, although some military grade tubes, I want to see you trying to destroy them.
Oh, sure.
But let's not get into that. Good. So all that circuitry got applied, in fact, to both fields, to the synthetic side of sound generating and to the, in fact, amplification of the sound generation, which is electric guitar. And the synthesized part is synthesizers, which is with no moving parts, as in not physically moving parts of any kind, just by applying voltage to a circuit, that circuit board would give back a sound coming out of a speaker. When an electric guitar that does have moving parts, the strings, that would get just amplified, just magnified, make bigger through the same technology, or at least parts of the same technology. Cool. So guitar players, you know your guitar, you know your lead, you know your cable, you know that you plug the cable on the guitar, you strum the strings, obviously open the volume, you have a port for the volume, open the volume. If it's too bright, you have usually 1 or 2 more ports on your guitar to make the sound darker if it's too bright. If it's too loud, that same potentiometer that may give you volume can also take away the volume the same way that gives the volume. And for tuning, you have your strings and you have your tuning pegs. So if any of the strings is not given the right pitch, you adjust it until it does, so it plays well with the other strings. On a synthesizer, there's no moving parts, or at least it should not be, not on a traditional one. So what is it that makes the sound? Because we know physics-wise, a sound is a air vibration. It's a compression of air, of layers of air that create waves of high density, low density, high pressure, low pressure that we perceive, that moves the little muscle we have inside of our ears, that moves, then goes to the snail. You call the snail, right?
Wait, sorry, say again.
So the sound goes into the tympani, which is a membrane.
You're talking about the cochlea.
Cochlea, thank you.
Yeah, right.
And
it looks like a snail. Yeah.
It looks like a snail.
Yeah.
And there is where that movement of membrane to little bones to another membrane in the cochlea.
There's 3 bones called the ossicles, and the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. And
thank you.
They attach to your tympanic membrane.
Mm-hmm.
The stirrups is attached to the little window in the cochlea,
mm-hmm.
and the complex. It's like a dampening effect,
mm-hmm.
But also can help to amplify a little bit, because if you had a sound slam into your tympanic membrane
mm-hmm.
and it went straight into your cochlea, you'd be like, it was so painful, right?
Yep.
And so it's
Been
a combination of transmission and
mm-hmm.
transduction and and then amplified by the fluid in the cochlea and the little hair cells. It's very complicated stuff.
The same way you say that sound travels very far and pretty well on a liquid means.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what the cochlea is doing inside. So on both, the speaker is the one making the transformation between electricity and movement and sound. But inside a synthesizer, there's no moving parts, or at least it should not be, not on a classic one, not on a 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't know when they started doing electromechanical synthesizers, probably in the 90s.
We had like a tone wheel, Hammond organ stuff, which actually has physical moving parts.
But there were like optical discs, right? It was
some had optical parts, some had like gears, gear ratios, and it's very complicated. I haven't seen one taken apart for a long time, but it's really...
Yeah, but I assume the gears is to give the right speed, i.e. pitch, to the optical wheels. That is what actually, by flashing, makes another electronic part create the vibration electronically. Cool. So then on a synthesizer, the thing creating the sound, the thing that is moving electricity in this case, not air but electricity, to then move the speaker that will move the air once it's done, is what in synthesizer terminology is called oscillator, because it's a circuit that makes the voltage going through it oscillate from positive to negative. The distance in between the highest positive and the lowest positive, that is your amplitude or volume, how loud it is. That's the distance between the highest peak and the lowest peak, right? Because we don't understand sound unless it gets repeated, the movement gets repeated, although we're still sensitive enough through other means to perceive what we will call an explosion, although an explosion also creates repetition of the movement, but also to taps and sounds that, in a way of speaking, that it only moves once, means it only lasts 1 hertz, 1 cycle, as in nothing, highest, lowest, back to nothing. That's what we call 1 cycle, right? And the distance between, for instance, the highest value and the next highest value in milliseconds would determine the pitch, as in how high or low the note will be.
Yeah, cycles per second.
Cycles per second, i.e., in scientific terms, is called hertz. Symbol is Hz. So that's your that will be your frequency, and that you achieve by making the electricity vibrate, alternate, oscillate faster, more times per second. That is a higher pitch, which is a higher note. Or if you make it slow down and vibrate less times per second with the same amplitude, with the same value for the highest and the lowest, means the same volume, it would be a frequency that it would be lower, going down, right? Instead of going high, going down. And that's how we understand music, between high pitches and low pitches, between your 6th string and your 1st string, your 6th string being your bottom, your bassist, your bassiest, sorry, the lowest pitch you can do, and your high E, the thin, the one which is paradoxically underneath on a guitar. Can I show it very quickly? Because sadly, many people and many...
High is on high pitch, right?
Yes. It's not very sad. I'm trying not to destroy everything. It's a very sad joke in guitar, which is basically that everything is in reverse. Because once you have the guitar hanging on your neck, Let's do the whole shebang. All right. So this is my high, which is my head, and this is my low, which are my feet, right? So if you look to a guitar, the highest string closer to my head is the lowest pitch of all the strings. And the lowest string, the one that is closer to my feet, is the higher pitch of the strings. If that's not confusing enough, then you got also the length of the neck, meaning that the higher I go going up closer to my head and or far away from my body, going up the neck, that's the lower note. That's when you go bass. But
it is helpful though, because when you think of the fretboard like that and you flatten it out like that, then it's laid out like a piano.
Yeah.
Right?
But
So
only if you do that.
Lowest on the left, highest on the right. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But with the difference that to do the full piano, you need to do this, and you also need to do this.
Right.
And then it's not that easy to do this, to do the side, because this is also going on a piano, on a keyboard type, is going from bass to treble.
Yeah, the repeated notes and stuff. Yeah. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Each string is repeated. All the strings on a convention So concert pitch is ascending fourths in between the notes. So there's tons of repeated notes. But as we said, we're talking lower pitch if you go toward the neck of the guitar. Trying to move the wrong way. This way. So toward the neck is lower pitch. Toward the body is higher pitch. Toward your feet is higher pitch. Towards your head is lower pitch. And that's your matrix, right? So on a synthesizer, we don't have the strings to deal with. It's just one piece of circuit called oscillator. And thanks to the advent of the transistor, the oscillator, which at the beginning were big chunky boxes with vacuum tubes inside and a big dial that would allow anybody to come close to it and spin the dial to choose the frequency that oscillator will be playing, the sound it does, on which pitch is it going to make it. Tons of development, of experimentation for different reasons, for radio reasons, for communication reasons, for codification reasons, because not all the electronic oscillators were designed to be heard. Some of them were designed just to transmit codified signals like AM radio,
right?
Test equipment, all right?
So if you're Heimbach, you're using test equipment for music. So
that's why he can do that.
Yeah. Because
those were the original synthesizers that would create out of electricity sound. Boom. So it's not until the advent of the transistor that it becomes manageable to create the cornerstone and the pièce de résistance that allow the advent of the synthesizer instrument, which is what is called VCO, voltage control oscillator. So you finally have one oscillator that, although you still can with your hand change the pitch, you don't need your hand to change the pitch as on a dial. How would you do that? It's called voltage control because with a very small amount of voltage and variations on that voltage, you would achieve the pitch of the electronic system to change. The higher the voltage, the higher the pitch of the oscillator, of the sound being produced. I'm going to do a demonstration. I have a little experiment here to demonstrate this and all the principles through the night.
Well, since you brought that up, bring up the two standards. There's volt per octave, and there's Hertz volt that Korg and some old Yamaha stuff uses.
Because, and although that to my understanding, and please, I'm going to say it once, but apply it for the rest of the night. Correct me and stop me whenever you think I'm talking shit, okay? I understand. Thanks. I understand that those two distinctions, those two systems, got applied when once the VCO got created. They needed it to reproduce musical notes on a musical scale. That's when those two divergent systems of fine tweaking or redesigning the behavior of the circuit came to be about. A little bit like two different schools of getting to the same point.
Yeah, because in the old days of synthesis, I mean, not just experimentally, but because they could, they used microtonal stuff, stuff between the notes, just like in a lot of international ethnic music and stuff from parts of India and other places use a lot of microtonal scales. So they were able to do that with some early equipment because they had all these options. But then when they wanted to get someone like a rock and roll guy or a classical guy to play something, he wants to play to a proper Western scale or a proper pentatonic scale or something like that.
The way I understand it, it's not exactly because you're putting it as on a way that, yes, some of the people behind the creation of the synthesizer were into music concrete and microtonal music.
Experimental stuff, sound effects, all that stuff.
Yes, but not yet. The point that I'm trying to mention, that I'm trying to set this point of the explanation, is almost 10 years earlier than that. So it's not that they were trying to go beyond the scales in the piano. It's like the people developing the circuits that would create sounds, although they have a little music and or sound background. They weren't musicians, professional musicians with a musical performance in mind. They were just trying to overcome the limitations of the electronic technology of the time in order to reach the control of pitch through electronical means instead of mechanical means.
So like the late 20s, early 30s, you had like the telharmonium and you had the theremin, which without proper control is all over the map. So you had ability to experiment, do wild ass stuff. And then later on, the 50s, like the Barons who did the soundtrack for Forbidden Planet, using some really wild techniques, way before Radiophonic Workshop on the BBC. So it's just very interesting stuff that those different schools. Like on a quick side note, Buchla synths came out without a keyboard. You were meant to perform with knobs and buttons and switches and things like that. No keyboard.
And contact surfaces.
Yeah, and touch. Later on, the touch plates came in and stuff. And then people said, "I need to play real keyboards. I'm a key person. I can't figure this out.
I need chords."
And they don't want to make the weird stuff. They want to make more traditional stuff, like a switched on Bach, and later music like Emerson, like in Palmer or whatever. So you had these different schools, and Moog from the beginning was putting a keyboard on this stuff. Even though he had a modular system, he put a keyboard on it because he knew his audience, right? Buchla for a while didn't have a keyboard.
Yeah, but wasn't Dr. Moog even not really keen on the keyboard?
He wasn't, but he was forced. He was pressured into it.
He was pressured into it by the musical side of his enterprise.
Yeah, he wanted to make money. No one's going to buy it if they can't play the notes they want to play. So
but even before we got to this new thing called synthesizer could become a business. Let's make it a business. How do we make it? Before that, as in the year before that,
sure.
What I'm aware is, I might be wrong, that this other person, Herb Deutsch,
Wendy Carlos is involved. All those people were involved,
which were
shaping
real musicians. Were the ones, in a way of speaking, pulling Dr. Moog's tale to make the system more pitch accurate, more pitch pleasant, more musical address, including the addition of a keyboard.
Because even with the keyboard, like, you know, I do modular stuff here and there,
Mm-hmm.
and if I don't put quantizers on certain things, it drifts.
Yeah.
And so even when you're trying, the stuff can drift. It's fun, but it's wacky, right? So
because we're talking about early, very, very early electronic components, right in the middle of even the space race, looking for smaller, more powerful, more accurate ways of delivering those sensors, in a way of speaking, or those triggers, or the fact that the actual prime matter that they used to create the transistors would be heat dependent. Its performance would be heat dependent, as in, on a cold room would behave on a way, on a hot room it would behave on a different way. Yep. So all those barriers got to be developed, investigated, push the limits of the components at hand at the time. So we can have nowadays analog or digital synthesizers that don't need to be tuned every 30 minutes or every 4 songs in a gig, because since the room is getting hotter and hotter, steamier with smoke and people and sweat, the whole tuning of the synthesizer would, as you said, would drift. Would go from your 440 to 435. If you're lucky.
Although there's still plenty of classic synths around where you have to worry about that. So,
yeah. We're masochistic like that. Modular. We're bringing them back.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, this modern recreation of one of ARP's, Alan R.
ARPA's always good about that stable oscillator stuff.
Wait, it was better, but still required. It still required bringing it back into common sense once in a while. Yeah. But it was better, at least that's the lessons we've learned from the past people in history. ARP synthesizers were at least 10% or 20% better at keeping pitch stability through a gig than, for instance, the other big brand competing at the time, Mr. Moog. People might have the opinion that Moog synthesizers sounded better, but they have to tune them more often. Which, talking among guitar players, we're already used to that. We don't understand a musical instrument that doesn't go out of pitch every song and a half.
Well, plus you break strings, you got to keep retuning those every time you string it. So
exactly. And let's not even go into floating tremolos and all the torture means to make your ear go every time you hit a flat note or a sharp note. So you guitar player brothers, these synth guys are all spoiled. So back to the example. I'm gonna change my camera, and I'm probably gonna start missing a little bit of audio. So let me know if it drops too much, because I want you to show this little experiment I put together with this purpose. Here we go. So I'm gonna have to use a little bit of your eyes synthetic, because, as I said, my system is not in optimal shape. So apart from the synthesizer, which is this blue panel with all these potentiometers, I created this little contraption that here, as I said, contraption, I made it in 20 minutes, it's a breadboard, is possibly the easiest and simplest circuit anybody could put together on a breadboard. So we're gonna start with the concept that, although is the most simple in history in a way, it's a little hard to grasp if you don't see it at work. which is the principle of control voltage. Let me see if I can do this. If I go for this,
That's better.
This, no. So this is not working. How do I change?
You had it. Just do that. The one up.
No. But I want to do. I want to. No. How do I? Because if I do this, because this is this, then why is not doing this one? Because it's a third image. Now, I'm gonna go for this one then.
That works.
Kind of. Cool. So, CV, the letter CV, it stands for control voltage. What does that mean? It means that if we have a voltage source that we can control, that would make the synthesizer behave on a controlled way. We can give orders to the synthesizer through variations on voltage on a very small scale. So small, I'm gonna do the experiment with this. This is the voltage. In fact, not all of this, because this is an old battery. It's not full. It's halfway on the way out. This is the voltage I'm gonna use to perform and make the synthesizer do the things I'm gonna ask him to do. So first of all, let's plug this. Also, my control is gonna be my knob. Hey, I got a knob, right? In fact, because I had some spare part from repairs I've done in the past, it's a guitar knob, right? So it's a potentiometer of
is that linear taper or audio taper?
No, it's audio taper, because this comes from a volume setup. Right. So, and it's gonna be very evident. I don't know how good can you see. There's an LED bulb here, or LED light. It's very faint. Yeah. But if I do this, shadow over it,
can you bend something over it so it has a shadow? Oh, there you go. That works.
When I control the voltage by letting more or less voltage through, that's how can you see this is a logarithmic, because most of the spin does barely anything, and the last bit does most of the job, right?
Because that's how our ears respond to the audio. Yeah.
Exactly, because our ears don't hear linear, don't hear 1 + 1 + 1. No, here's 20 + 10 + 40 + 60 + 80. It goes on a logarithmic way instead of on a linear value. Sorry. Okay, so this is how I'm going to control the voltage. There. The LED is going to show how much voltage I'm sending to the synthesizer. And with this connector, I'm going to feed the voltage into the synthesizer, right? So let's talk first about the voltage control oscillator, right? So if we go back to the synthesizer, it's going to be faint because it's white lines on a blue background. The 2600 is split in first 3 chunks of vertical lines with similar controls to through the 3 oscillators this reproduction has. The original made by ARP had only 2 oscillators, and the third one, it was the same electronics but on a different range. In a way, the same way you have a guitar or you have a bass guitar, on a synthesizer you would have what is called a VCO oscillator, voltage control oscillator, or an LFO, low frequency oscillator. They also can be voltage controlled depending on how you manufacture it, but what you the line on the sand to make a difference between them is the frequency range they're gonna be able to put out. Oscillators are usually on the frequency range of 20 to 20 kilohertz frequencies. So frequencies we can hear, right? And an LFO, a low frequency oscillator, is gonna be below, slower, bassier than those frequencies. And everybody's gonna say, wait a second, if the VCO is already reaching the lowest low that humans can hear, 20 hertz, what does a LFO sound like? It doesn't sound like anything, because unless you tweak it, or the specific LFO can go a little higher than the line in the sand, those 20 hertz, you will never be able to hear a frequency out of an LFO. Then what's the purpose of an LFO? Well, the purpose of an LFO is to create a robot, an automation, electronic means to create a cycle somewhere out of control voltage. Because the same as in, as we said, a sound wave is an oscillation. It's an oscillation of the air, high pressure, low pressure. If you have seen a speaker, forward speaker, backward speakers, if you don't have both motions repeatedly, as in over and over and over again, you don't have a frequency, therefore you don't have a sound, right? But the thing that makes that speaker move mechanically is a voltage that is changing from 0 to a set high value, then back to 0, then back to a set low value, right? So it's moving, it's going up, going down, going up, going down. If it's doing it slow enough, low frequency oscillator, right? You could apply that voltage movement to any other piece of the synthesizer that would react to voltage movements. We'll explain that with an example, right? But let's start with the oscillator. One of the things that this synthesizer has in the third, I'm gonna call it the third basic block or building block of a synthesizer, is called VCA, voltage control amplifier. Same as the oscillator can control the frequency through voltage, a VCA, voltage control amplifier, can control the volume, how loud that sound of that frequency will be through a control voltage. Once again, what's control voltage? I'm going to show in a minute. It's just to explain that this particular synthesizer has a spec, a feature that allows me to bypass the amplifier and just like on a tap, open and let sound through. Is this it's a little too high. It's a little too. Am I?
You have a zoom on there?
No, I wish I had. No, okay.
Switch to the wider view. It's fine.
I don't have one that can show. Basically, it's here. Right here above everything. Here. This one is gonna give me, or at least should, when I open the sound, give me a second. That's why it's not working. Choopy choopy choo. We go here, and I open the sound, and now, sorry for the camera move. Okay, so that should be open. That should be. Oh.
Did you mute the input?
The output. Let me see what did I got wrong. No. Careful. No.
Just answer questions in the chat here. Hippopotamus,
Yes,
that's an ARP 2600 clone from Behringer.
Yep.
It's the Blue Marvin, which has a spring reverb in it.
Yep. I know my mistake. So, good. Sorry. Diversion. This 2600 is what you would call a semi-modular synthesizer. Modular synthesizers would take all of the parts, VCA, VCO, LFO, VCF, and have them in different, let's call them boxes, different parts, different chunks.
I'll show it in the side panel here. Here's a patched modular.
Yep. So every different color panel, it's a circuit that has a different task. Oops, sorry. And what it does, I think it's because of this camera distorts. So if I go back to this one, you can see a little better, but still not. Yeah. So what this one does is it puts all the chunks in one single chassis and applies what another piece of lingo, what in synthesizer lingo is called normalization. Basically, it connects the electronic connections of one of the pieces of electronics that has one job, and it connects to the next piece that it should do the next job,
it's
right?
Like default mode. So
internally, without having to
without
use
patching cables, you get
Yep.
no sound. You have to patch
Exactly.
literally every jack to every jack.
Exactly. When it's semi-modular and normalized, some of those cables are already happening, but inside the chassis, inside the synthesizer itself. The ARP 2600 is called semi-modular because you still can ignore those internal cables and put external ones that would change the routing of the parts.
Yeah, it shorts it to another path, so it goes to other destinations and stuff. Yeah.
Good. So my mistake is the convention on synthesis, on analog subtractive synthesis, which is this type of synthesis we're practicing tonight, is your LFO needs to feed your VCO, voltage control oscillator, needs to feed your VCF, voltage control filter, that then will feed your VCA, voltage control amplifier, and that would feed the output. And the output would feed the speakers. What I forgot is to send the signal of the VCO, voltage control oscillator, to the filter. In this particular synthesizer, you do that by reducing the attenuation. All these faders here, what they're doing is attenuating the amount of voltage signal for control or for audio that is being sent internally. So if I want to play VCO number 2, I need to feed VCO number 2 fader into the filter, right? manually, and this is the sound. What the VCO would do through control voltage, once I plug it, so with my voltage cable feeding the battery, I'm gonna plug it on the connection that would send this voltage to the pitch. Because this circuit is a botched job, there's already a tiny bit of voltage going through. Enough voltage to make that pitch do that wow, and enough to shut completely the LED, because that leakage of voltage is not feeding the LED anymore, it's just feeding the pitch. So now, with my tab, with my control voltage,
And for anyone's curious why it continues to sound, it doesn't have any gating or envelope added to it. So it's just the oscillator constantly sending out a pulse.
Because that's what the piece of circuit called VCO does. It makes a sound all the time, non-stop.
Yeah.
This is something that is very hard, or at least to me was very hard to wrap around, and is what makes the rest of the parts of the synthesizer necessary and very helpful, right? For instance, the next part would be, or in fact, let me show you what an LFO sounds like. So I'm gonna open again the VCA. I'm gonna make it totally open. And this same VCO, in this recreation, I can transport on an LFO, low frequency oscillator. Okay, I can, that's not even the lowest frequency of this LFO. I can make it even lower manually, although for other reasons I'm not gonna do it very extreme, but I can go even slower. So those little taps, the frequency of those percussion sounds, that's the frequency of the oscillator. Which I can still control with my control voltage. And now we're getting very close to audio range. But this is how low an LFO actually works. Technically below the audio range. That is the portion of control voltage that an LFO takes care of. Back to audio. Same piece of circuit, it's just a different range. It's just starting on a different point. And we have the control again. Right, so the next, I assume chronologically, the next chunk it got invented was the VCA, because you have a sound like this that is not totally musical or even pleasant to some people, to the untrained ear. The first thing everybody wants to do with this sound, what do you think it is, Synth-Addict?
Well, you need to control the volume, so have a performance out of it, and then
in other words,
later. So
the first thing you want to do is to make it shut up.
Yeah.
So you need a means to control the volume of it. So that means in this particular synth could be through this control, Beautiful silence. Or through voltage control. I'm gonna take my voltage control and might get this plug wrong the first time, but I think it's this one.
Oh, is that smoke I see there? No.
Yes, it was. So if I plugged it in the right spot, it might change volume. Let's see. I'm not sure I plugged it in the right spot. Yep, that's the right spot. So is this fader here? It allows me to control on a linear fashion. If I want to control on a logarithmic fashion, I need to change for the one by its side. This is just for my own information. I've never heard the difference. That is not even working.
Probably confused because the nature of the pot you're using.
Possibly. Fail attempt. So let's back to the one that works. Right? So that's my VCA, voltage on my pot, control amplifier. Right? So now we have control over the pitch.
Also, we probably mentioned at the beginning, but just in case beginners are watching this, a potentiometer is a variable resistor. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. So it's a resistor.
Like the rheostat in your dimmer on your light switch, if you have a dimmer light at home. Rheostat's exactly. Like a potentiometer. So.
It does the job of, well, yeah, Banuba. A rheostat is a different technology to do the same job.
But it's the same function overall.
It doesn't have the same guts, but it does the same job.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, what I'm using here is a voltage source, which is the battery, a tap, a controller, a wheel to control how much, which is a variable resistor. Am I in camera? No. A variable resistor, which is a guitar potentiometer. And the LED is just to show the ups and downs of the voltage, right? I don't need the LED. I would take it off and it would do the same job. It's just for illustration purposes. So we have control over the pitch. We have control over the volume. The next thing is to try to make the sound nicer. As in not so electronic, not so harsh, a little closer as much as possible to, at the time this one particularly got released to the public, to an acoustic instrument, a classic instrument, say a violin, say a trumpet, a flute, things that we're already acquainted with and sounds we already like. Let's try to make it a little less buzzy and a little more musical. That's why I think that's why they invented the filter. What is the filter? Basically, for starters, is the cornerstone of what we're talking about tonight, which is subtractive synthesis, which is based on the principle that I start with a sound that has a tone of sound, in a way of speaking. What it has is actually a tone of harmonics. Many frequencies played at the same time. It has tons of them. And the same way you would, a sculptor would take a huge block of granite and then little by little chip off the excess until he reduces the block to a sculpture, to a person, animal, fruit, whatever is meant to be done with it. A filter is the tool that you can apply to sound to take away what you don't want in the sound and get closer, or as close as you might wish, to a smaller subdivision frequency-wise, harmonic frequencies-wise of that big sound, closer to the one you're looking for. So the controls on a filter, it's not volume and it's not pitch, although it's also frequency related. It's called cutoff. Cutoff is the point where you want the electronics to start making a dent into the sound. The point of what? The point on the frequency spectrum. Let me get back. Well, sorry. The point on a frequency spectrum. As we said, human hearing can hear from 20 hertz, 20 vibrations per second, to 22,000 hertz, 22,000 vibrations per second. Any one of those individual pitches could be played or performed or executed at the same time by an instrument. And the volume of those particular frequencies, of all of them, or any combination of all of them, and the particular ones that sound louder than the rest, is gonna be the fingerprint that is gonna make us understand or hear the difference between a violin and a piano. It's not about the note you're playing, which is gonna be the loudest frequency of them all. That's what that's what is called the central pitch, or
fundamental.
Fundamental. Thank you. The fundamental frequency, because it's the loudest. But all of the rest, all of the other 19,000 or 2,199 frequencies are also sounding at the same time, just on different volumes, right? So the filter,
harmonic relationship, based on the waveform you choose, you have different harmonics and stuff. So
yeah, the harmonic series is kind of almost a rule, almost a law that says that if your fundamental, let's call it 400 hertz or 440 hertz, by acoustics and usually through physics, an acoustic instrument will also be reproducing 880 hertz, 1660 hertz, basically multiples, doubling that frequency going higher, and doubling that and halving that frequency going lower. That also applies to the octaves on an instrument. The frequency difference between C4 and C5 is that C5 is twice the frequency of C4. That's what tell us what an octave is. That's what an octave sounds like. Is that twice the frequency. The rest of the 12 notes don't have. They're not. How to put it? The Western 12-tone temperament is based nowadays in 2024 on dividing that doubling of the frequency, 440 to 880, that distance, all those frequencies, mathematically equally divided into 12 chunks. And that's where you get your 12 notes. Each one of those mathematical divisions, that frequency, except for the 440 and the 880, every other of those remaining 11 are going to have tons of decimals, right? Then this when comes to temperament and other ways to make it more musical to human hearing, but the principle is a mathematical division of those 440 hertz difference between 440 and 880 divided in 12 equal chunks. So the cutoff is gonna put the electronic principle of shutting down, not abruptly, not instantly, not completely, but gradually shutting down every frequency that is higher than the cutoff or lower than the cutoff, because depends on the type of filter, the type of electronic circuit you're using. If what it's doing is diminishing the frequencies above the cutoff, is what we call a low pass filter, because from the cutoff, yeah, I'm gonna need to do this. From the cutoff down, Andy, do you have in the iPad? Could you show an EQ or some kind of cutoff curve? Do you think you can have an EQ up?
Well, some of these apps actually show as you move the filter. Let me see here.
So while I keep explaining that,
I'm not prepared.
Make me a favor and try to find something so we can show visually. So a low pass means it lets pass the frequencies that are lower, as in bassier, than the cutoff point. The same way that a high pass is a filter that would allow all the frequencies higher, as in treblier than the cutoff, go through, and it would diminish all the frequencies lower than the cutoff. They're kind of the opposite in a way. And through technology and electronics development, they also develop what is called a band pass filter, which is, in a way of speaking, very loosely, is a combination of both. Meaning, if you have a low pass filter that only lets pass the lowers, and also a high pass filter that only lets pass the highest, the highers, they counteract each other, and the only thing they let through is the degradation around the cutoff. And by degradation, what I'm trying to explain is, even with the digital technology, although some digital programs claim that they can do what it would be a, I don't know, 200 decibel per octave cutoff, as in actually sharp, vertical, no sound higher on a low pass filter, higher than the cutoff point will go through at all. That's not reality. When we talk about electronics, when we talk about physics, and we talk about analog synthesizers, the filter can only attenuate. That's why you have filters optimized for 12 dB, decibels per octave. The decibels is a sound measurement, a sound volume measurement that, apart from quite complex to calculate, is also logarithmic. So it's not based on equal units. Each unit is bigger or smaller than the previous, depending if you increase in units or decrease in units, which makes a little harder to explain. But on layman's terms, basically is telling me that if my cutoff point is set at 440 hertz, 441 hertz is not going to be totally shut down. It's going to be diminished by 1 decibel. So it's going to be quieter than it used to be, but not totally off. 445 hertz is going to be, on round numbers, let's imagine it's going to be 5 decibels quieter than 440 hertz. So on and so forth. So each higher frequency is going to be diminished by a higher amount, to the point that as we increase on frequencies, it will reach a point where it's actually shut down. There's no more sound coming through. I can show you that manually. If I open again the VCA, this sound is going through the filter. And now manually, I'm gonna move the cutoff point from, I'm gonna, what we call, because this is only low pass, I don't have high pass, although I could create one with this synthesizer, but I don't have a high pass. And also I could create a band pass, but I'm not gonna do it because it's a lot of cabling and I can't remember. So I'm gonna open totally the filter, as in it's going to have no effect whatsoever over the sound. Let's put it down a little bit so it's not that loud. So that would be all of the frequencies of the sound coming out at the same time. Okay, now I'm gonna start moving down, as in through the frequencies, descending, going from the highest frequencies to the lowest frequencies. I'm gonna move the cutoff because the attenuation is steady, is the same amount per octave, meaning if I set the cutoff at 20 kilohertz, it's on like the roll off, the degrading of the signal is only going to affect 21 kilohertz and 22 kilohertz. But if I move the cutoff to 18 kilohertz, the same amount of degradation is going to apply to 18, 19, 20, 21. So each one of those frequencies is going to be attenuated more, to the point that one of them is going to be totally inaudible. So I'm going to open again the amplifier, and I'm going to just slide down from treble to bass, the low pass filter, so you can hear what it does do. The minute I put the cutoff so low that no audible frequency can get through, you get silence, which is also very useful for creating your patches later on limited, mostly, namely analog synthesizers, either the normalized kind or the modular kind, or the mixtures like this one. It's another useful way to make the sound shut up by filtering out all the frequencies in the sound. So if I'm going to do it again, I'm going to open all the way so the filter will have no effect. You're going to hear again the full sound, and I'm going to go down again so you can hear it. Right. Another job that I don't know when did it got discovered, or if it was just an accident, or where they were looking for it on purpose, of the filter, any filter, is what they call resonance. They feed back the same signal that is being filtered, is feeding back to itself, which creates a amplification right on the cutoff point. As in, the rest of the band is gonna sound the same. The part that is attenuated is gonna remain attenuated, and the part that is not attenuated is gonna remain not attenuated. But right where the cutoff point is set, that frequency, it's gonna have an amplification bump. It's called resonance, which is gonna make a very interesting sound like this one. So I'm gonna put the resonance halfway up. You still hear no sound because my filters is still shut down. Basically, is all the way out of, it's removed every single frequency. But as soon as I move it, and because I'm moving it, is when you're gonna be able to hear the difference with the resonance. that little almost nasal tone to the sound is the effect of the resonance of amplifying just the cutoff point.
I have a nice visual of it now if you want to see it.
Yes, please.
Let me just fix the camera angle here.
Let me give you the screen.
So this is a little app called Bliss Monolith. And they have a nice little graphic here. So there's some modulation going on right now. You can see the cutoff. The filter is actually starting to dance around as actual modulation here. But if I just leave it here, it's not going to do anything. But listen to the timbre change as I play the note. You hear that okay?
Can you just...
Louder?
No, sorry. Just not to confuse matters, can you get the LFO rate, the speed of variation? Can you put it down to 0? Or the amount?
It's not really doing that much. I was just going to, because I'm manually controlling this part. So check this out. Watch this.
Yeah, but it's shaking and it's confusing.
Okay. There's it's still moving, but it's slower. So
Yeah,
what you get here is the note, and then I'm going to grab the actual cutoff curve here.
That would be the resonance. That amplification is the resonance.
There's a filter cutoff, and I'm doing the resonance sweep now by moving.
So
when he's turning the knob for resonance with the cutoff sweep, it's the resonance peak is pulled up like this, and then the knob is doing this actual motion here.
So that square window is trying to signify the whole frequency range. From side to side would be 20 hertz, I assume, to 22 kilohertz. That's the two vertical side walls, right? So the biggest amount of light blue area, that's the frequencies you can hear while he's pressing the key down, okay? So the dark background, dark blue background, and everything on the right side of that vertical line is basically the frequencies you cannot hear anymore. That's the cutoff point, and that the angle of that vertical line, you see, is not totally perpendicular. It's making a gentle slope down.
Yeah.
That is what we would call what I've been calling the gradation, is the slope of the cutoff. How many decibels per octave will attenuate? Means that although the cutoff is just the peak, that particular peak that is now amplified, that's the cutoff, that one that is moving right now. Although that's the cutoff frequency, you still can hear a very small amount of frequencies to the right of that point.
Yeah, when you turn the cutoff knob, you're doing this.
Exactly.
Resonance is the amount of the peak here. So.
Which you cannot set resonance negative, right?
I don't. I think it's just good. It
just move it with that finger.
I think it just
exactly.
It just basically goes to 0. So
you don't get negative resonance. You get a smoother slope on the decay.
If I turn that all the way off, you can hear it still filters, but you're not getting the yowie kind of sound.
Exactly. The moving dark blue area to the right of the cutoff point, that is the modulation that something else is doing.
There's a modulation section here from the LFO.
Okay.
And there's an envelope setting as well for the,
we're gonna get to the envelopes in a minute. So that's a visual representation. That's a low pass filter. Basically, all the light blue area is the frequencies. Once again, we're talking about the vertical axis is decibels, is volume, is loudness, and the horizontal axis is frequencies. Okay. So the blue area would be the intersection of how loud and which frequencies can you still hear. And that's a low pass. Do you have a high pass in that app?
Let me check. I would hope
Can
so.
you check
You
that?
never know with these things.
Obviously, the big difference now is now that we're showing you a digital.
Yeah, I have high pass, band pass, and notch as well. So here's.
Let's just show them so they can see the difference. So now the blue area is in the opposite side. It means that only the frequencies higher, as in treblier, than the cutoff point will sound, but no the low frequencies. See, now it's going to lows, but it's getting sharper and brighter with less bass, less bottom. That's the job of a high pass filter. Okay. Can we see a band pass?
This is band pass, so you get.
So exactly. So you only have control of the cutoff point, the slope. That's what you just exactly changed. You see the size of the bump go smoother or sharper. That's how many decibels per octave is cutting, but is cutting both the frequencies to the right, i.e. the treble frequencies, and the frequencies to the left, i.e. the bass frequencies. By moving the finger up on down on the square, you are adjusting the resonance. That's why it's getting sharper.
And then you have a notch,
which is the inverse of the bandpass, which instead of letting pass only what's inside the wedge, is letting everything but what's inside the wedge. So it's just removing a very, very small portion. This is very useful for sound designing. If you want to, if you're getting close, very close to a sound you wanted to get to, but there's something extra, something that is in the way, you can remove that.
This is a multiplier here, so I can do, if I want to do, this is a ×2 multiplier, so you can basically get a little extra performance out of it.
So that, for instance, would be a high pass and a band pass altogether. So just moved it. So now you have just a notch. That's just the band pass.
So I get a multiplier here, so you can make it more aggressive.
Okay. So that's basically
filter types here.
Yeah, the 4 basic.
You can also do comb filters. There's a bunch of other kind of filters out there you can do.
Cool, because the comb filter is one I'm not really sure about. I don't really understand.
I don't have it on here, but I have it on some other stuff.
Cool. So this, you see, we showed you what is the big advantage of the digital synthesis world, is that you can have more than one option for the same price. Basically, the limit is your CPU, your RAM memory.
Well, everything, your audio hardware, how good does it sound, right? The sound quality of it.
The things it can do, not how nice does it do it, but the things it can do, it's basically CPU, right?
But that matters a lot too, because you could have high quality CPU and a poor quality audio path, and it doesn't matter.
And it sounds like a toy. Exactly. So back to the filter, what you can control through voltage, because once again, in the case of the 2600, we're talking about a VCF, voltage control filter. It's going to depend on the design of the filter itself. In this particular one, you only have control over the cutoff, right? So I'm going to get my voltage control jack. It's going to come on the control side of the filter. The filter is this big chunk here with the biggest amount of faders, which is controlling the first, I think the first 4 faders is the sources, as in VCOs 1, 2, 3, and all the things, all the goodies that this synthesizer has, that will send sound, as in electric version of sound, inside the filter. And then the next 4 faders is controlling how are you gonna change it. Let me also make a point that for guitar players and bass players, you have been dealing all your life with a filter. It's called the tone knob, right? On things, on guitars as simplistic as a Fender Telecaster, 2 pickups, 1 volume knob, 1 3-position switch, and 1 tone knob. And in probably 90% of or 85% of every guitar ever designed and released, the tone knobs are a very specific type of filter. First of all, you don't really have control over the cutoff. Your cutoff point, the frequency at which the filter will have effect, it comes determined by that capacitor that is soldered between your volume pot and your tone pot inside your electronics cavity, right? That's your cutoff point, that capacitor. So if you want to change that cutoff point for whatever reason, you need to go in there with your soldering iron with a new capacitor, remove the old one and solder a new one. What you can control with the pot, which is a potentiometer, a variable resistor, is the slope of the filtering after the cutoff point. Also, let me mention that on passive guitars, both electric guitars and bass electric guitars, oops, what I was about to say. Yeah, the type of filter you're using is what on synthesizers we call a low-pass filter. Basically, it's there to take away your treble frequencies. How? Anything above the cutoff point, i.e. the value of the capacitor on the guitar, on the tone, will be filtered or grounded, deviated to ground, as in shut up, on a degrading curve as steep as the amount of potentiometer of resistance you apply to it. That's why potentiometers usually work the other way around. The louder you get, the brighter. So turning, you would call it clockwise, the same way you turn your volume to make it louder, would make it brighter. And counterclockwise, the same way you make your volume go quieter, it makes it duller, because it's making the job of taking away treble frequencies above the cutoff point, which is the value of the capacitor. And the slope is basically, on round numbers, on a figure of speech, if your tone pot totally on 10, totally open, is 0 dBs per octave, let's call it that halfway on 5 is applying, let's call it 12 dB per octave, and on 10 is applying a slope of 24 or greater dBs per octave. It's not taking lower frequencies. The tone knob on a guitar, on a passive guitar, doesn't have the capacity to change the cutoff point, but it has the capacity to change the amount of frequencies higher than the cutoff point that you put into ground. As in, if I put to ground, let's say 10,000 kilohertz down by 6 dBs, everything between 7 and 10, which is 7 is typically the value of the capacitor, will almost unnoticeably get diminished. But if I take the 10K and put it down by 24 dBs, means that that 9K or 8K is going to go down by 12 dBs. And if anything close to 7 is going to also go down by 3 or 6 or 7 dBs, something that you can actually hear. That's why it sounds duller. But it doesn't usually lose depending on the capacitor you install, you don't really miss much of the mid-range because the cutoff point does not move lower. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make the same filter sweep I was doing with my hand on the control. I'm gonna do it with my control voltage, if I can remember where I put it. Okay, now it's set to basically 0, so I might not be able to open too much. Because depending on the manufacturer and the way you construct the filter is what determines how fast it would move, how high it would go, how much voltage does it need to go very high, so on and so forth. So back to my control voltage. Let's see what we get here. Still very dull. It's not giving me enough voltage to open it high. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the minimum cutoff point manually. As in, I already open enough so I have some frequencies coming through. And now I'm gonna apply the extra control voltage. All right. So that would be the filter. In this fact, this last time you've heard a little bit of wah, because although it's in this synthesizer I cannot control it with the control voltage, with the CV, manually I already have my resonance on the high side. If I remove totally the resonance, open back again my filter, so it's gonna open as well, but not as honky. You see, still goes brighter and more vocal and less thumpy, but not so much nasal or honky. So we've seen LFO, we've seen VCO, we've seen VCA, we've seen VCF. These are the bricks that allows a standard analog subtractive synthesizer to create their sounds by adding more oscillators at once, by making variations on the tone and or the timbre through the lifespan of the sound. And thanks to the control voltage, obviously, what I've been doing, I think we've done with this one, at least for the minute. So what I've been doing with the potentiometer, with the knob, is a little bit pointless because I'm doing exactly the same that I would be doing by grabbing with my hand the actual setting, in this case, fader. But when we are playing, or if we're triggering the synthesizer from a keyboard, my hands are busy there. I don't have my hands to go there, to go and tweak. That's why we, thanks to the control voltage side of a synthesizer, we can create virtual, fake, imaginary hands that would make the same job that I would do by moving the slider. How can we achieve that? First thing, the first piece of a modular synthesizer that does that is called envelope generator. An envelope generator, e.g., or do you know any other name for it?
Yeah, Moog uses a different name for it. Hold on. Contour, I think.
Contour. Basically, it's a small series of voltage instructions, of voltage modulations on synthesizer lingo. You call modulation to anything that changes over time. As in, it takes a little time, you can notice it changing. If it's instant, if the change is instant, it's not technically modulation, although it could be a modulation extremely fast. But you need an amount of time, could be 20 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds, a whole second, to be able to hear the change. That's what we would call modulation. And it's done by the machine itself through either programming or sequencing, not by you by hand. Although you have the freaking modulation wheel, which is the the contradiction for the whole concept. Yes. I thought you were about to say something.
No, I was just chewing. I was having a snack.
Sorry.
No worries.
Is the time. So
your envelope is the most generic envelope is a 4-stage envelope, ADSR: attack, decay, sustain, release. Some fancier equipment, even some old Casio synthesizers and stuff, sometimes had like, I don't know, 7 or 8 stages to some of them. But most things generally operate around the ADSR because it mimics real life. If you hit a drum and you get a percussive sound, it's a hard attack, not a soft attack. And then the sound builds to a point, to a crescendo, and that's where it starts to decay. But if it doesn't, and it's like a held note on an organ or something like that, you would have sustain engaged until you let the key go. And then once you let the key go, you would have a release portion of the envelope where it tapers off and fades out, if that's the tone you're looking for. And most things in life, whether it's a bird singing or a human voice or a cello or whatever, can be created with an ADSR profile of just even 4 stages sometimes.
I'm not sure if the original 4-stage was created because that's all they needed, or because that's all that they could
ADR
achieve.
As well. You don't always need sustain.
Exactly.
You could have ADR or ASR. They're different. Like sometimes they leave elements out, especially if they're trying to cut corners, and you just need a percussive envelope. You don't need 4 parts for a percussive envelope because you're not sustaining.
Yeah.
So they have ADR.
You should
envelopes.
not, unless you're trying to replicate a gong. Then you have sustain.
Yeah.
But it's very short.
But you can have a super long release on that.
Yeah.
And then it tapers off over a long period of time. So there are many ways to skin a cat, as they say. So not all manufacturers use the same exact layout. Again, they call them different things. And here, Moog on the mini Moog calls them modifiers or contour. Basically,
contour modifiers.
Yeah.
And do you know of any non-digital envelope generator with more than 4 stages?
I've never seen any, but I'm sure they're out there. Because, at
I
some point, there are a lot of manufacturers are doing pretty weird stuff, pushing, not to use the pun, but pushing the envelope, right?
Yeah.
So they're just trying different things.
My point is, the knowledge I have is that we achieve more than or anything beyond the 4th stages of the envelope generator, and now we're going to explain them all. Once we manage to start getting digital control over the voltage. Because not only is the control over the voltage, but it's also digital clock that will give an extra precision and extra steps, being able to change even to negative values very, very quickly and very precisely. So to me, the multi-stage envelope generator comes together with the digital era of synthesizers. But let's go back to the principle. So, as my synthetic just said, is a way to shape the evolution of the sound over time. except for sounds that are extremely short, like percussive sound, like a hi-hat. That's it. And funny enough, that's how was originally generated. One of a different type of oscillator is what is called a noise generator that would give you kind of the sound that you get when you get snow on your telly when the broadcast is ended. That full of frequencies and totally constantly changing. That is something we could call electronic sound of noise, right? But apart from that, you want to the difference, for instance, between a piano and a violin is that the piano, because it's a percussion instrument, has a very percussive attack, which is the first millisecond of the sound. Goes from 0 to very loud extremely quickly, almost imperceptibly, almost instant. When a violin, unless performed on a specific way, usually takes slightly longer to get to the full volume. It's more like a mwah instead of a pak, like a piano. That, for instance, would be the attack portion of your note, of your sound. And that makes a big difference to make your brain believe that what you're hearing is from the string family, as in bow string, or from the percussion family, as in a piano. That's a crucial part of it, apart from timbre frequencies, etc. So the way the sound evolves, I mean, in a 4-stage envelope called ADSR, those stages are controlling, in fact, and it's here. If you can see this, sorry, you can see 5 faders here. Ignore the one that is totally down. Ignore this one, because this is my amplifier bypass. So the other 4, you can see here, these 4 are the 4 stages, which would be the attack portion, the decay portion, the sustain portion, and the release portion. What does that mean? So the attack is controlling time. The time that the voltage it's sending to either the filter or the amplifier takes to go from nothing at all, 0 voltage, to a little bit more than normal voltage, as in normal volume. So the first milliseconds, right, from 0 to a lot. The decay portion would control the time it would take from that a lot to the sustain level, as in how loud is the note, in case it can be done, once the note is held in time. For instance, a piano, although it has a limited length of the note, it will die eventually. There's no way to keep the note going forever. The volume of the hammer is slightly bigger than the volume of the string vibrating once you keep your fingers down in the keys. So that's the difference between the attack, that's the slightly louder, and the sustain, which is the volume, which is voltage. What the third controls is voltage instead of time, like the previous 2. How loud the note will be once you hold the key for a long time. And opposite to a piano, which is a mechanical, is a physical element that has its momentum, inertia, and decay to nothing, to silence, a synthesizer technically don't have those limitations, because as long as it has voltage, as in power, technically you could hold the key down, which is a switch, keep the switch open, and the note will last as long as your fingers on the key.
Or on the guitar, you could use an EBow or Sustainiac, right? So.
For instance, yeah, that's one way to fake it on guitar, or just tons of gain and play it right by the speaker. That's one way to modifying the sustain part of the note, right? How long is that gonna last? But on this particular synthesizer, analog subtractive, we have no control over the length of the sustain. We have control over the volume of the sustain, how loud is going to be. So how different the volume of the attack and the sustain is going to be, basically. And the fourth and last would be the release. Keyboards for synthesizers work very, very similar to the keyboard on an organ. It's almost like a switch, like a lever. You move the key, it creates a sound, you stop holding the key down, and the sound stops. Synthesizers, in the other hand, applied a fourth stage to that envelope called release. Means how long after you remove your finger from the key or the trigger, whatever voltage trigger you're generating, I voltage, MIDI message, from the time you release your hands from the instrument till the sound actually dies, how long would it take? So, attack is the time from 0 to a lot. Decay is the time from a lot to normal, to volume, to sustain. Sustain is the volume of how loud is that note going to be compared to the attack. And the release is how long, is time again, will the note last after you stop playing the instrument. So time, volume, and time. That's your 4 stages of the envelope. Envelopes, traditional envelopes, vintage envelopes like this one, don't usually have voltage or CV control over the stages, as in over the attack, release, sustain, or attack, decay, sustain, or release. Traditional ones. Modern ones, and I'm sure Synthetic has already one, have implemented CV control over some or all of the parameters, so you can change them in real time. You can modulate them. Do you have one of those?
So we'll go ahead and finish your description, and I'll do a recap.
Cool.
I'm going to show a couple of things as part of a recap. So.
Right. So that would be a 4th stage, right? What the only control voltage that is implied on the performance of an envelope generation is the most important bit, which is when all these 4 stages are gonna happen, and that is usually done by a voltage trigger. Voltage trigger comes, they come in 2 flavors, depending on the electronics inside the envelope generator. They could be triggered by what is called a trigger, which is a burst of electricity of a specific voltage, different depending on the brand and model of the synthesizer, for a very short time. It's like a spark, a bleep of voltage. It's a tick. That would be a trigger. Many envelopes will start their 4 stages after that very tiny piece of voltage happens to them. The other way you could do that, and is especially necessary for 4 or more stage envelopes, is through what is called a gate. A gate is a change in voltage that will hold changed longer than an instant, as in no voltage, higher voltage, keep there, keep there, keep there, keep there, and then low voltage again. That is a gate. If it lasts more than a millisecond, it's a gate. Some gate generators can even design how long the gate is going to be. Why is that useful? Because the time the gate stays open at a high voltage is the time that the sustain is gonna keep playing the note. It's the same time. So if you have a sustain value and you hold the key down, that is generating a gate that is gonna keep the sustain value going on at the same preset level, but going on as long as the gate is open, i.e. high voltage. This particular synthesizer has a second type of envelope generator. It's a two-stage called AR, because it's ignoring the decay time, the time between peak voltage and sustain is totally ignored. I don't remember if it can obey a gate. I think it does. It's just that the value of sustain is always 100%. So you go from
it's usually used for percussion stuff. So.
Or for VCAs. Very useful for VCAs. Because on a VCA, at least on a vintage synthesizer, is plenty enough with having no volume, all the volume, as long as the key is down, and then no volume. Because the rest of the nuance on volumes is going to be performed by the filter. So that's what this synthesizer has done here. You have an attack time and you have a release time. So you play you put your finger down on the key. This will tell how long will go from no volume to full volume. Because it's being triggered by a gate, the length of the note will be determined by the time you spend with your finger pushing down the key. That's why it doesn't need a decay time. And then the release time, once you've released the key, how long will it take to die? Typically in this synthesizer, this envelope was meant for the amplifier. As I said, no volume, full volume, no volume. And the fourth stage, which is a little more nuanced and has a little more expressiveness over time, is mostly meant for the filter. That, as I showed you before in the filter sweep, you can go also from no volume, a lot of volume and brightness, and then back to no volume again, just with a filter. This being semi-modular means that I can patch either or of the envelope generators to control the one is not meant to. I can take the 4 stages and control the amplifier, and the 2 stages to control the filter, if I so choose so. That's the magic of the modular and semi-modular synthesizers, that you can remanufacture a different behaving synthesizer just by putting patches down. So, your recap?
Sorry, I was fixing something here. Yeah, quick recap on some stuff we already went over, just because, you know, it's been a while, and for some people here might be beginners or don't know some of the basics. It's good to just kind of do it, especially for people who are new at this stuff, or guitar people who are not really into synthesizers and the comparisons of the two. So real quick, as he was saying before, on the guitar, so you have your basic parameters of sound. You have pitch, amplitude, and timbre. For pretty much anything. There's some other subtleties in there as well, but those are the three basic components of sound. So in a guitar, obviously your pitch is determined by your string to get your note. It's also determined if you're bending your string to change the note, getting pitch bends and stuff, and how you've tuned the guitar, all that kind of stuff. Your timbre, like he was saying, it's determined by your positions of the switch for the different pickups, the different filter knobs on here to get different timbre changes. Your amplitude is determined by your actual volume output, as well as how hard you're strumming it, other little things like that. And then other timbral stuff with outboard effects, stomp boxes, things like that to tweak your timbre. And other little subtleties in there I'm skipping over. But that's basically what you're using with those terms on the guitar. Now when you go to the synth, let me just bring this up here real quick. Why is it doing that? No. Stupid thing. Okay. On the synth, so classic Mini Moog design, made famous in the early 70s. This is the Model D equivalent in software, actually made by Moog for iOS. And it's really nice because you have this, so they have this kind of, it's made out of wood, it has a metal case and stuff. So they've done this skeuomorphic approach where it looks like the real thing really did. And let me fix this zoom a little bit because I think I get this zoom to look a little bit better here, so you can see more of the screen. There we go. So what you have in the case of the comparison with the guitar stuff I just discussed, you have it laid out. So obviously pitch is determined by the oscillator. So in this one you have 3 oscillators. One is generally used as a modulator, but you can also use it as a third building block for the actual sound. So depending on how you choose to route it. You have the 3 oscillators here. So that's pitch. You have timbre, which is the filter section up here. So in this one they call it it's filter, I forgot, I can't read it here, it's kind of small. Filter brilliance is your resonance. So they call it brilliance, but that's resonance, and filter cutoff. And so they have a envelope section here below the filter for the filter. This is the envelope section for the pitch. So this is the amplitude control, as well as the master volume, which is also amplitude for the entire unit. So the only difference with the filter envelope is it's controlling the timbre, not so much the amplitude. Although the way the filter works, you can change levels of different frequencies. Like in the famous Mini Moog, they call the ladder filter, 24 decibel per octave. In this classic subtractive analog synth. So you're actually using the filter to subtract. You take a rich oscillator full of frequencies, and you're filtering over time as you're programming your stuff, or actually when it's a finished sound, but you also have some modifiers here with the envelope. You can actually change the filter over time, and you're bringing in opening it up to let more harmonics come out, or taking harmonics out to change the sound. That's why it's called subtractive. The filter is actually taking things away. And so this is very logically laid out for a beginner, for a student, or a beginner in general. So again, you have your oscillators for pitch. You have your timbre up here is the filter control. Then below that you have the envelope for the filter, the envelope for the pitch, for the oscillators. The center section is the mixers. That's also part of the amplitude, because you can actually change the volume of each oscillator in the mix. So for example, I'll play just a simple, I've already taken some things off for this patch, but this is basically a patch called Keith, named after Keith Emerson. He's a big Mini Moog user. So that's basically, I'm gating the notes. I let go. I'm not getting that constant tone as you heard when he was playing with the semi-modular synth that just had the oscillator running. So I'm actually gating this with this, and the envelope is actually helping to control that. So if I want to get more, that's very high attack, it's boom, 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 right? Turn the attack up. So, I mean, sorry, short attack is this. Turn the attack up, and it's much slower. Takes longer to get into the actual meat of the sound. It's a gradual. So like a string sound, when you play a bow a violin, it's going to be it's not going to be boom like the fast attack. Then you have, this one only has 3 controls. This is not an ADSR. You just have the 3 of the controls. So like the release. So if I turn that up all the way. Why is it not releasing? No. Interesting. There's some other settings on here that I'm missing. But anyway, so you have your mixer section here. So let me go change this. Now I'm going to change the timbre some more and change the volume potentially. See, that's a much thicker, richer sound because now I've stacked 3 oscillators at once now. And there's also some extra little goodies in there, some modulation causing it to do this rich sweeping motion like a sync sound. And again, it's monophonic, right? I can only do 1 note at a time, just like when you play solo on a guitar. You're just doing 1 note at a time. And back when this came out, that was the standard. It was very hard to get anything polyphonic. Although we were talking about the thing from the 30s, the Hammond Nova chord, that could actually play polyphonic, but it had a very different sound than it's totally different circuitry. But this one, to get these nice, beefy, rich sounds out of here, it was very expensive to make it polyphonic. You'd have to basically have all the circuitry times however many keys you wanted to hold down. So if you wanted 4-note polyphonic, you'd have to have a much bigger unit. And that's when you got into stuff like the memory Moog, which is much more complicated, which, you could easily do chords and various things on here. But what's cool about the software, since we're in software land here, I can actually cheat and I can turn on polyphony. So now I want to go back. I hit the play button, so now it kind of zooms it out a little bit. I took some of the extra controls out. So now I can actually do polyphony, which the hardware could never do. So that's another advantage to using software. So if you're getting into this stuff as a guitar player, as a beginner or whatever, and you don't want the limitations of the old hardware, although they sound amazing, and they're quite expensive as well, and they need upkeep if you get a classic one like the old Model D from the early 70s. They sound great, but you don't have this flexibility. You cannot make it polyphonic just with the flick of a button. But as you can see, this was made by Moog on a portable device, an iPad, and it sounds amazing. So it's not going to have maybe quite the punch or the warmth side by side with a real mini Moog and the proper audio system. But you have all this flexibility. You can experiment and play with the timbre, play with the pitches, play with the different envelopes and amplitudes and stuff. But while you're sitting here, you can actually just start messing around with the oscillators and get intervals. And when you get them slightly out, you get this beating. Makes it fatter. And the other trick on here, which we didn't go over too much, I don't think, is the waveform of the oscillator. The waveform actually gives you a lot of timbral options before you even touch the filter. So like a sine wave is a very pure tone, often used for a bass or a simple thin lead sound, depending on which frequency range you're in. But you go to something like a sawtooth wave, which is what I'm on right now. No, I'm sorry. These are all square waves. I'm on a square wave right now, or also called a pulse, depending on how it's deployed. But it's a square wave. So you have basically up and down and across makes a square, and you change the pulse width to get some variation in the sound. But it's like he was describing before, the gate. It really just goes up, straight across, and down, and it makes a very different kind of sound, different kind of harmonic components than something like a saw wave, which has a lot more harmonics. A square wave has basically odd harmonics, and sawtooth wave has its own set of harmonics. And so depending on which kind of wave you're using, you're getting harmonics missing or added, or sometimes all of them. So sawtooth wave, if I remember correctly, it's all the harmonics. It's the beefiest wave you can use as far as timbral options to start filtering with. The square wave is the odd harmonics, and I think the triangle wave is even harmonics. I'm trying to blank on that. Sorry about that. But essentially, they are different components in the waves. You can see them on a graph. You can see them in books you can read about to learn about all the different waveforms. It's just slipping my mind at the moment. But this is also your timbral option here as well. So mixing all of these elements together, you can do flutes and violins and strings and spaceship sounds and whatever the hell you want to do with it. Very, very cool, very, very powerful. And in something like this, which is like, I think it's a $5 app on the iPhone or iPad, it's really, really expressive and gives you a lot of the flavor of this classic stuff without the big hit in your wallet, and allows you to experiment and, like I said, compare the features you have in your guitar that have these components: the amplitude, the timbre, and the pitch.
Just as a close-up, could you just scroll through the waves? Make just one oscillator just to hear the different waves.
This off again. So it's one.
Open the filter.
Turn this back.
Just to hear the difference between the waves.
Okay, so we're going to go to... Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. I'm on this one.
That's a sign?
This is a triangle.
Okay.
So, much less... Oh, there's some other weird stuff coming in if I hold it too long.
Mm-hmm.
There's, this is a very thin, much simpler envelope. Simpler waveform than the one.
It's rounder.
So it's used sometimes for bass. It's used for plucky sounds sometimes. And then you get into the. Let me see here. This is the square I was in before. Very nasally sounding. It's often used for clarinet. If you listen carefully, you can already hear kind of a clarinet sound in there. If you filter it correctly and add an envelope to it, it sounds like a clarinet almost without much change. So it's pretty cool for that. And then we have sawtooth. Very buzzy
somewhere
sounding.
In between. Yeah. Not as
so when
sharp
you do the
as
filter on
the
this
square.
guy, this has a lot of weird settings on it. One of the things about the ladder filter, which I was talking about earlier and I forgot to mention, by design, out of the original design of the 24 dB ladder filter, as you add more resonance and do the filter sweep, it cuts a lot of the bass off. So you have to be very careful how much resonance you provide if you still want a bassy punch in your sound, because the classic design, they've done changes over the years with this is called bass compensation or filter compensation, where they've tweaked the circuitry or just redesigned the circuit to allow you to get more bass into it. Or there's other filter designs that just don't have that problem at all. So depending on what kind of sound you want to do and where you want to go with it, it's nice to have the those options, because sometimes, hey, it's kind of fun. If the mix is getting too busy, maybe you want a slightly thinner sound, less bass, because Moogs are known for bass on a lot of their basic patches. So sometimes you want to take some of that bass out, and the filter is a really quick way to do that without doing the wee wee wee. Just a quick thing to add a little bit of the resonance. Don't do the sweep, but just cut some of those low frequencies.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you have there's a few other waveforms to choose from, but and then this is your they do the waveforms in feet, named after the old standard of pipe organ feet.
The frequency range, but that's because because of inaccuracies of the division of the frequencies on an oscillator. For instance, I think the minimum, what was it, 4 octaves keyword?
So right here, it's doing that. When you heard him play the LFO earlier, it's that. It's like really, really slow. At the
basically,
32 foot.
Traditional analogs would have a limited amount of keys, so the way to spread through the whole concerto piano key range is to basically change the range of the oscillator, and that's what the feeds is for. Is you can make it
on a modern synth. You would have octave switch buttons here to go up and down the octaves.
Yep.
But back then, this is how they did that. So
it's the same. It's just an analog switch. That's what the synthesizer is.
Yeah. But they have some other settings here for mixing and turning certain features on and off. So they actually give you a lot of cool stuff in the original Mini Moog. It's way ahead of its time.
Yeah. It sounds really good. But
yeah, they sound great.
Would you say we've done this subject? I would call
so.
it.
The main thing was to compare, the analogs of the sound parts to the guitar between the synthesizer. I think people hopefully got the gist of it. It's not a complicated subject. It's just odd if you're not into it. If it's the first time.
And the fact that even in 2024, it's all based on technology from the 50s.
Yeah. Well, when you get it right, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So the only other change other than this is obviously as analog synthesis became more like digital synthesis and digital emulation of analog synthesis and other technologies. You obviously have other stuff. You have sampling, you have FM, you have wavetable synth, you have granular synth, all these different flavors you have. Beyond the waveforms I showed, you have actual engines, different styles of synthesis, taking it all different directions. A lot of modern stuff has hybrid of that. So you can mix samples and mix an analog equivalent synth sound and a wavetable sound.
The biggest advances in synthesis engines, I think it's been accomplished through the oscillators, as in what electronics is gonna create what sound which way. The envelopes, I don't think they have added extra steps, which you could consider more nuanced. Filters, I don't think nothing new has been done in the past 20 years, because we're still working with the basic 5, if you wish.
There are other ones that come out over time, and there are other companies that had their own designs. So even
they have their own sound, but it's the same
even a low
thing
pass
with a
filter
different
made
smell.
by a different company, because they don't want to get sued by the guys who had patents on this stuff. They've actually done their own slightly different versions of it. So you have an ARP low pass filter versus an EML low pass filter versus a Moog low pass filter versus
but variations on a theme. That's what I mean. It's not really breakthrough. We invented a totally new type of filter.
No,
haven't heard that in 20 years.
But for example, I have a module on my modular system, not right here right now, made by Depfer, and they basically have like 40 filter types in there from all different manufacturers. You have high pass, low pass, band pass. So it's the different ones I showed in the other software, but also made by different manufacturers. So not only they have different base designs flavors of the filter, but the flavors are different because of the manufacturer's implementation.
So the result is different, although they're doing the same job.
Same idea, but because they made it in such a different way, it does sound different. and even between manufacturers who copy, like Behringer's famous for doing all these recreations of synths out now, like the ARP behind him, and it's obviously not real ARP circuitry. It's a recreation of that, so it sounds pretty good. But if you're to talk to a purist, it's not that close. If you're a hardcore purist, but it's close enough, and it sounds great. So don't be afraid of the fact that it's cheap and may not be up to the spec of the original one, because it's still a lot of fun to play with if you don't want to play the software, and you save a lot of money. It's just when it's just like you guys who collect fancy guitars.
Yeah.
A certain Les Paul is not going to be a copy of a Les Paul 20 years down the road is not going to sound like an old Les Paul. It's right. The wood is different, the pickups are different, the age is different, the treatment is different.
Oh, you mean a modern copy? Yeah, definitely.
All that stuff. So, but it's okay because it's good enough for most people. Most people can't tell or don't care.
Synthesizers are getting to that same stupid level, but it's basically the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah,
is that to get a 1% extra goodness, and try to define goodness when it comes to art and music, instruments and music expression and so on and so forth, to get one extra percent, you need to spend 20 times more money.
Also with analog gear, just like with, I would imagine, certain types of old guitars, they need a lot of maintenance. They're expensive to maintain and keep running. So.
With the difference that 95% of the parts you find on a vintage guitar could be not to the same quality or aging, but they could be replicated with modern materials. Problem with specific niches of synthesizers, of vintage synthesizers, is that because they were so cutting edge technology, they were so breakthrough, they were so unique. Trying to keep them alive is becoming a cannibalizing exercise. Because to keep one alive, you basically need to tier down two parts another one.
Well, and that's what Kent was doing for some of the synth stuff too. His repairs, he was basically cannibalizing chips from some gear to put into fancier gear that probably more valuable in certain ways. So he's going to cannibalize a less valuable item to save a much better unit. So
that hasn't been done on guitar to that extent, but guess the difference is that to me the defining difference between the guitar collector, vintage collector world and the synth vintage collector world is that the performance size has a bigger value than the historical authenticity. Example, on an amplifier, the minute you replace the vintage parts, as in old 30-40 years old parts, and put does the same job modern equivalent, that amplifier is half its market value. It's not, it doesn't, on a synthesizer, as long as the sound is not evidently different, as in, oh, this doesn't sound anything like the original, as long as it keeps working and in the ballpark giving the same experience, the vintage synthesizer market would still pay very high value for it. On the guitar
guys
market,
make the new CS80 boards and stuff, and according to Kent and other people, they sound great, and they're brand new. So,
and yes, it might make the CS80 vintage unchanged parts value stay or even raise a little bit, but the ones with modern equivalents are not gonna drop too much. Maybe 5-10K drop. That's it.
Also considering the fact that some of those chips are literally unavailable anymore. You have to redesign this stuff because otherwise it's a dead unit. Yeah.
Exactly. On a guitar, since 95% on any guitar, and probably 85% on any amplifier can be recreated nowadays, the price drops drastically. Example, the tone is a filter, is a resistance capacitor filter, an RC filter. If you change the original old paper capacitor for a, God forbids, an electrolytic capacitor, that guitar just drop its price by half. And I'm talking 30 grand down to 15. Automatically, just because you didn't put a period historical correct part inside it. That's the main difference.
Also, don't those paper ones also make it sound a bit different too? I mean,
that's the justification for it.
Yeah.
Because because you're talking about electronics so simple, they're almost they're on the verge of not even being electronics, of so simple they are. Every part makes a tonal difference. Then the better question is, do you really care for that difference? And can you actually hear the difference? As in, once you put that guitar on a modern amplifier, or even on a vintage amplifier with modern parts, on a stage, inside of a band, playing rock and roll, can you hear the 10,000 difference in wax paper capacitors? People claim they do, and that's why they pay 40 grand for a 60s guitar. But my pocket says bullshit.
Yeah.
Because I can't even if I could hear it, which I can't, even if I could hear it, my pocket would say, are you fucking out of your mental mind?
Yeah.
No, mate. You go back to the 1 grand guitar and be happy with it.
Right.
Good. I'm not gonna farewell anybody and wish anybody nice day and good weekend, because everybody left. So at least this is here for posterity, and whoever finds a minute to watch it. And please bring your questions. Please don't forget, the rest of the weekend is still full of synthesizer related YouTube content. For instance, am I wrong? Is Synchrotron doing his live stream tomorrow morning?
Usually, I didn't see if he said yes or no, but usually he does. Yeah.
Okay. So Synchrotron is one of the channels. If you fancy some ambient, relaxing music,
tomorrow. He has the day off. So.
Okay, no Ramsey. What about JX?
He didn't announce it yet. So normally, if he hasn't announced it by now, it's one of those, like, might be a pop-up show. He may just do it. So keep your eyes peeled. But nothing was announced yet. I had no notification of a replacement.
Thank you so much. The chat said that everybody left. By the way, since you're here and you can type, because I'm not familiar with your handle, are you coming from the guitar side or from the synth side, Mr. Odovas? Please let us know. So possibly not a replacement, not a how does he call it?
We still have 4 people watching, according to the YouTube thing, so we'll see.
Oh, that's new. Last time I checked, we were on our own. So how does JX3D call his show?
Just look for a YouTube channel, JX3D.
Okay.
It's the first. There's nothing else named it, so it'd be the first search, and then just keep an eye on his live channel, the live tab, and see if anything pops up.
Espong Arms?
I mean, he usually has a pub on Saturdays, unless JX3D has something that runs late, like the senior show, the senior synth stream. So
Senior Central.
most likely
yes.
Kent will do something. Sometimes he starts a later show, and then Sundays, who knows? I know occasionally Robin
It's just
Vincent
it's
does
come
some
back
stuff.
already.
Not sure. I don't have
Okay.
I don't have a chance to watch the show much anymore, but I know Robin Vincent often does stuff on Sundays also. So
Yeah, usually the end of the month, which should have been last weekend, but because of synthesize and all the stuff, you might have not. Well, yeah, all the channels are available. Please search them all and enjoy them all because they're there. We will be back, life permitting. I'm trying to get my calendar.
it's
It's
a
going
threat and a
to
promise.
be both at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be in August, and it's going to be the August 2nd, Friday, August the 2nd. We'll be back, and yeah, if I'm honest, we still have to make the homework and decide what is gonna be the topic. Definitely
Yeah.
gonna be interesting, but this time it's gonna be a surprise.
Yeah. Even we don't know what it is yet.
Exactly. Now we do, but we don't want to disclose it.
Yeah.
So, guys, thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, leave them under the video. I'm talking to the people who just watched with us live, or to anybody who came afterwards and watched it on catch up. If you feel like, we do have a Discord group, which I'm gonna try to post in a second. Can I do that? Just come around, say hello, tell us if you play guitar, if you play synths, you play synth guitar, just to catch up and talk with
you
people.
did Barry White again. Your voice dropped.
Oh, so it's that time of the night, right?
Yeah, so like last time around the end of the show, something happened.
Yeah, maybe it's my
Sample rate,
batteries
your
are
sample conversion
going
changes
low.
or something. Yeah.
Okay, let me try that to see if that. It might crash dismally.
That's okay.
Oh, it's also because I'm trying to open Discord. Give me a second. If I can. All right. Any
Now it's
change?
back to normal. Yeah. So Discord did it?
I think it did, yeah.
Interesting.
So let me see if I can get the handle.
Yeah, just put the link in the chat. I can't because I lost my
I'm
admin
trying.
status.
No.
It's pretty easy to find. It's just six oscillators on Discord, number 6. Not the word 6.
Yeah. No spaces, 6 oscillators. As usual, I cannot find the handle. I got the invite people, but
Yeah.
oh wait, it's gonna be there. Yeah, it's here. That's what you get when you only do these things once in a blue moon. So can I put it in the chat straight?
You should be able to. Yeah.
Yep, there is that. So feel free, join in, say hello, and let's talk about synths and guitars. All the good stuff. Say goodbye, and let me get back to you because we have a little song again by you, the master disaster of the best music in the net.
I can't remember if this is the one I wanted to play last time. We forgot to play it, but I just grabbed one, so hopefully this isn't. There is some guitar-y really sounds in it, I think, but I don't remember, so we'll see.
Yep. I hope you'll enjoy it. And take care. Have the nicest weekend and be good to each other and play guitar and synths. All right? Here we go. Bye-bye. One.